All right. Hello again, and welcome to another part in my multi-part series going over my NXT design process for the level design challenge. This is the final part in my first stage of designing the layout to my level, and this will pretty much encompass the entire package I'm submitting to Ubisoft for a shot of winning, hopefully. We'll see if we get to the top 10. I'm submitting a link to a playlist with all of these videos along with my submission, so hopefully Ubisoft is watching up to this point. Or maybe I did specify to maybe check out this video specifically because I hope to review my entire level and go over everything from start to finish pretty well, talking about my prompt, bit of the story, bit of the characters, each gameplay beat, some of the cool mechanics I want to work on, and yeah. Anyway, if this is Ubisoft listening in, I really appreciate you taking the time to check out the videos. Thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun to work on this project. I really appreciate being given the opportunity. It's been a lot of fun to push my creative muscles to their limit here. I'm not saying my assignment is the most creative thing, but coming up with unique ideas for fun gameplay opportunities as well as unique looking vistas and environments within the confines of a cruise ship. It was a lot of fun. I learned also a lot about, way too much about boats. Like, dude, I maybe did too much research. Maybe went a bit too in depth. But anyway, let's get down to the meat and potatoes of it. So, my level takes place on a cruise ship. This a yacht. A super yacht that has cost billions upon billions of dollars and was recently acquired by a very wealthy senator. This senator has used his political power to escalate tensions with a foreign nation, and thanks to his ties in the military-industrial complex, he's been able to become massively, massively wealthy and can afford to have this huge yacht with the most excessive possible rooms that you could possibly have in it. So to celebrate, he's taking a drunken voyage and to gloat, essentially, around the world. And unfortunately, he has beached himself on the yacht on a sandbar that is just on the coast of the country that he is provoking. In response to this, a group of mercenaries have managed to commandeer the yacht and hold the senator hostage, essentially on his own super yacht, where they are waiting for reinforcements to arrive to take him to the mainland and serve him his just desserts for his actions. The player is a covert operative whose goal is to infiltrate the yacht and retrieve vital information from the senator before the reinforcements arrive. So it's a level that takes place on a time limit with stealth mechanics and some basic NPC escort stuff for gameplay, which we'll go over in a bit. So the player will start on this little boat here. I imagine it looks like the boat that SEALs Team 6 uses, like kind of a covert, I don't really a dinghy, but like, I don't even know, that'd be inflatable, I don't know. A covert raft that they have been able to use to make their way onto the sandbar undetected. This sandbar is fairly barren. I imagine there's maybe a couple of trees or, some grasses for flavor. But the key feature is this very, very old watchtower here, which is conveniently placed right next to the yacht to allow immediate entry onto the main deck. The player can also explore this sandbar and make their way over to a balcony which leads to the lower deck, which is accessible and will immediately gain access to the lower deck for players who are observant enough to be able to spot this area here. When the player starts, I want them to, the first thing they see is to just be this humongous yacht. I think it's really cool when games have, like, lets you see a location before you enter it, just to see, like, the scale of it. I'm trying to think of an example right now. It's a really good one I'm trying to think of here. In The Last of Us, there's multiple points in the game where you see, it's near the beginning, you're trying to get to the Firefly outpost, which you constantly see in, like, the distance, and then when you get there, you can actually explore it, and you see how big it is. Like, you start off seeing in the distance, and it seems kind of small, and as you get closer and closer, you realize how big it is. It's kind of the idea. I want the player to be able to see the entire yacht from the beginning, get a sense of how big it is. Maybe from the windows, the player will be able to see, like, some of the patrol paths of some of the guards. Essentially, a way of having the player be able to scout the yacht before even getting on top of it. So once the player picks a path, they're going to make their way onto the actual yacht itself, which is this here. Let's kind of start going from, let's start here. Let's go kind of right to left. So this area here is the lower deck. It is the bow end of the ship. I had to learn a lot about the proper terminology of port, starboard, bow, and stern, which I included in my write-up. This here is the ladder from the balcony, which the player can use to get onto the yacht from the sandbar here. This area contains some more narrow hallways, as it is the sleeping quarters of the captain and the crew. When the yacht is running at full capacity, it has a crew total of many, many members who have to get everything running. Unfortunately, they are not here right now because the senator thought that it was probably fine if he could just pilot the ship on his own. I think it's just a fun way to not only make it so I don't have to have as many friendly NPCs around, but also kind of shows off the ignorance, not really ignorance, but like the man, I thought of the word for it in my head, my bad. The is bashfulness might work, I don't know. The false confidence, there we go, that the senator has, that everything is under control right now. Player starts here. Directly out from this room here is a camera that will pan back and forth. Proper timing allows the player to be able to sneak past it. If the player makes too much noise or is caught by this camera, this NPC over here will awaken and come by to deal with them. Over here is the captain's quarters, and in it you'll find a note containing one of the 5 digits necessary to unlock the code to the senator's office. The senator has locked himself in his office to avoid persecution by the mercenaries, and the only way in is to know, well, the only way in for now, I'll explain that in a bit, is to get all 5 digits necessary to open the door to his office. I wanted to, from every possible entry point, I wanted there to be a note nearby enough so the player gets the idea that they need to be searching for these. So the player can enter through here. There's a note over here. The player can enter on the main deck from here. They can go into the main foyer area. On either path they can take, there's a note over here and over here. If they go from the main deck and take either of the stairwells, there is also a note really close by in the command center and in the map room. The command center one probably is the one you have to deal with last because of the certain conditions needed to unlock the room, but we'll get to there when we get to there. So if the player avoids this camera, they can pretty well easily get over to the stairwell here, and they can make their way to the upper decks. This area over here is kind of more of a challenge area. It's pretty well optional. A roaming guard kind of patrols this L-shaped hallway. The player can duck their way into this little room here to avoid his pathing. And then in this room here, there is a guard patrolling. This is the kitchen here. A guard is patrolling around one of the tables here. And if the player is spotted by him, he and his buddy who is checking out the meat locker will come out and attack the player. The reason this guy is in the meat locker is it kind of adds to the story of the mercenaries themselves. They come from a country that seeing this amount of excessive food is kind of foreign to them, and they're pretty well bewildered by the fact that the senator has this much in terms of like commodity. Anyway, the kitchen is a little bit. We'll talk about the pantry now. So actually, no, we'll come back to it. Just know that coming over this area is an added challenge, but provides an important tool that we'll talk about shortly, which is this area over here. Let's move on to the stern end of the lower deck. It can be accessed through the main deck stairwell here. A player can come from either side. This is the extra boat garage here. A NPC is roaming around it. The player must time their movements carefully to avoid being detected by him. The reason this is here is I got a lot of reference images from actual super yachts, and I think having a boat within your boat it's something that only rich people would have. It's so silly to me. Like, you already have something that can go in the water and go wherever you want. The idea that you need, I need a second one so I can have my my guest boat while I drive my big boat. It's just silly to me. Just another example of the senator's wealth and his his substantial wealth. Over here is the engine room. It contains a lone guard who is going back and forth and inspecting the engines. I like to think that the mercenaries they have to scavenge for the parts for their boat because they don't have the ability to get a brand new spanking new one like the senator does. I wanted to have a bit of a contrast between the absolutely insane wealth that the senator has and kind of the ramshackle shanty nature of these mercenaries. So this guy here is going back and forth and like picking pieces off of the engine to loot for himself. The main reason the player wants to explore this room is the generator here. It controls all the electricity to the yacht, and if the player interacts with this switch here, they can temporarily disable all electricity in the yacht. This will shut off the lights, making it easier for them to hide and be stealthy. It will turn off all the cameras and will turn off the laser sensors, which will be important to not only to make it easier to avoid enemies and avoid the cameras because the cameras are all turned off, but also gains access to the command center, which we'll talk about in a bit later. This is a temporary shutdown, as the boat will enter into a not really power saving, but like a backup power mode. We'll be able to turn everything back on. There's another way to disable the cameras later that is like a permanent disable. I wanted this area to be unique because it provides a greater benefit to the player, and that it also makes it easier to be stealthy and hide from things because you have more darkness, and that lowers the enemy's ability FOV. But make it temporary, and the player will have to go back here to reset it if they ever need to use the bonus of being able to shut the power again. This area here is the mercenaries' docked boat. They use this to not to infiltrate, but to commandeer the super yacht and take the senator hostage. Among the people that the senator brought with him onto the super yacht is his favorite personal chef. The senator is a bit of a gourmand. He loves his food. When having his yacht designed, he specifically requested to have a food elevator that has access to every single floor of the yacht. So at any point, the senator can just push a little button and say, hey, I'm feeling like a snack right now. Make me a delicious meal. And then he can always have access to this food, which is why there's this elevator here that goes all the way from the lower deck to the senator's office themselves. The chef here has a key to the pantry room, which can be used to unlock this door here by going through a little added challenge at the bow end of the lower decks, which grants access to the food elevator, which the player will be able to use to traverse the level easier. A little bit of a secret that makes returning players have a reason to replay the game. I like to imagine that a better time to complete the level will increase the score and make it so players will want to replay the level over and over again to get a better score. Speaking of better score, one of the things I'd like to explore with this level is NPC escorts, much like games like Rainbow Six Siege. And there's a part in Watch Dogs 1 I really remember as a kid, where I kind of this came out in like what, 2013? That's 12 years ago now. Crazy. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. Where you can escort a character. I think his name is Bedbug. Via, like, you can escort him around stealthily. I wanted to explore similar ideas where the player can escort the chef all the way back over to the escape raft on the sandbar for a better score. I think it'd be cool. It adds a bit more challenge because you also have to avoid yourself being detected, but as well as having the NPC avoid detection, and it's entirely optional. Also, it plays with a thought I've had, which is morality. How can the player get a connection to the level and think about their actions? One of my favorite games when I was growing up was BioShock, and I really liked how you could choose to either save the little girls for a reduced reward, but that would be paid off later, versus just leaving them. I think you just harvested them, yeah, for immediate reward. So playing with that idea was something I wanted to explore with this level, and I think it will eventually come across when I end up building it for sure. So let's go to the main deck. From here, the player will start the level. If they take the old watchtower, they'll end up right about here. From here, they will be able to hear the muffled cries of the senator's mistress, who is locked up in a room that is directly at the bow of the ship. They've locked her in here because they didn't want to hear her complaining anymore, so they put her in as far away as possible from every other guard in the on the ship. It just adds a bit of fun. I think it adds a bit of fun flavor, and also makes it so the player has to backtrack their way back here. So because time is a resource in this level, there's only a certain amount of time the player has to be able to beat it. Choosing to willingly go all the way back to save the mistress is it's an important choice the player needs to make, and understanding how much time they have left. Anyway, this also plays into parts of the morality of the level. It kind of adds into the it gives the senator a bit more character, that he has his mistress with him, but not his wife. It may be the player will be disincentivized to save the senator because he's even more of a scumbag. You know, I really want to play up that he is like a total evil, not really evil, but like a total scumbag. He is villainous. He's actively provoking war with another nation to profit off of it. And he beached his yacht trying to foolishly gloat about his success to said country. I think I want the decision to be able to try and save him later to be really impactful. So to see if the player should be trying to do the harder thing, which is to save the senator, so the player can get more information out of him and get a better score, or leave him behind because to get what he deserves, essentially. But anyway, that's just talking about story stuff here. From this part here on the yacht, which is where the player comes in, they'll be on this big old helipad. This helipad is used by the senator's entourage of investors or other world leaders, important political figures, who come to his yacht for business meetings and just for leisure purposes. Which is why, if the player takes this direct path here, the first thing that we'll see in the first room is a massive foyer, complete with an ornate fountain, directly smack dab in the center. This fountain is here not only to break up line of sight with this guard here, but also because I thought it was just so stupid and silly to have a massive ornate fountain on a ship in the middle of the ocean. It's so dumb to have this like little water feature when you're in this vast open ocean. I thought it was just such a fun idea. It really just shows off the excessive spending that the senator he just does. Like, no one, and only a person who's extremely wealthy and rich would ever care to have a fountain on his yacht. Anyway, but from the starting position here, the player can either go directly forward into the foyer or can take left or right paths up these stairwells here to get to the upper deck. The player will have to avoid this NPC, this guard here. He is moving back and forth. Obviously, he's moving back and forth here, and it must be properly timed to avoid. This is kind of a diegetic way to add a bit of variety into the level. So the player is given the option of either taking this path here, which is the port path, or the starboard path. But because this guard here is constantly moving, if he's over here and looking, facing towards starboard side, and the player must go this way to the port path in order to avoid being detected. Whereas if the guard is closer to the port side, the player must take the starboard side. Just a natural way to promote variation between every single playthrough. And yeah, it's just a natural way to implement some form of variation between game playthroughs, and also incentivizes the player to pick an alternate path every single time. Let's assume the player takes the port pathway. They'll end up in this little boardroom here with a note containing one of the 5 digits necessary to unlock the senator's office. I like to imagine that if it's possible to implement this, every time the player replays a level, the code is randomized, so the player can't just cheat and immediately just like type in what the code would be. It's probably an easier way to implement that, where they just actually have to. It would flag if they have all 5 pieces or not actually have an actual necessary number as part of it. But anyway, from here, the player can enter into this room here, which is supposed to be a casino with a camera that pans back and forth here. When I was creating this level, I wanted to have every room feel unique. The lower deck, the bow end is, well, just the lower deck in general was supposed to be about stuff that you wouldn't really want to show off if you're showing off, like, you wouldn't want to show off your show. You really wouldn't want to display to the public if you're showing off your new impressive super yacht. So it has some of the stuff like maintenance areas such as the engine room and like this garage room and this little storage room here, and the crew's quarters, just stuff that isn't as fancy that you wouldn't want the public to see. This is stuff that goes below deck for a reason. It's not showing off the grand majesty of the super yacht itself. Whereas the main deck has the stuff that is mostly used for leisure purposes, including this casino here. This is a home theater. This is an impressive kitchen and dining hall, exercise room, stuff like that. Here's a bar and a pool. If you're taking investors here, you'd want to show them the main deck. This is where all the fun stuff happens. The upper deck I wanted to have as more command-oriented stuff. So this is the command center here with like the controls to the boat itself. This is a server room. There's a little map room here for charting your voyages. This is the senator's personal room here. There's a little art gallery. This kind of more fits into the leisure side of the main deck, but I thought it was just a fun idea to include an art gallery, the senator's personal leisure suite, and the surveillance room. Anyway, not to get off topic there, but that was kind of my design process, to have unique rooms befitting of every floor of the deck, every deck of the ship. So it's kind of have a bit of a theme going. I was a little worried that, like, I didn't want to have too much variety. The casino was kind of bordering on the edge of, like, too much variety, I'd say, but just to keep things coherent, but also keeping things varied. Well, actually, another thing is, when I was thinking about creating rooms for the ship, I wanted to talk about what stuff would a crazy billionaire want to do out in open water, and gambling all his money away sounds like something that he would enjoy doing. Also, I thought it was fun that the conference room is right next to the casino. So, like, if your boss was like, "Hey, let's take a break from this meeting really quick. I'm just gonna go like hit the slots, just like a couple rounds." I think a couple rounds of blackjack. I think it's just funny and absurd, and I think it adds a little bit of character to the level, and also a bit more to understanding what this kind of guy who would have a boat like this is like. But anyway, These are roulette tables here. As the camera pans back and forth, the player is able to duck behind these roulette tables to avoid being detected by the camera. From here, they'll be able to get onto this hallway. And as a bit of a pause from the port side, let's go over to the starboard side. Players entering from here will be able to either go forward to this little stairwell area, which grants them access to the upper and lower decks, or they can go over to this home theater, which the player will have to navigate around the seats in order to get up to here, which is the projector room, which contains a note containing one of the 5 digits necessary for unlocking the senator's office. An enemy here patrolling back and forth must be properly timed to be avoided. The player can also tuck behind this little kitchen table here, this preparation table here, to avoid detection, and they can also hide in the food elevator if necessary, if they have unlocked it previously. If the player starts the level over here and makes their way to the food elevator, it will be completely inaccessible. The player must go and unlock the pantry first and to be able to call the elevator from multiple points of the ship. Anyway, now we're back here in this hallway. The player can either choose to go into this little dining area here or make their way through the gym. The reason I put a gym on the ship was I thought it was a fun idea. The senator's wife decided that he needed to get a bit of exercise, and he needed to get a bit of exercise. Sorry about that. So he was forced to put a home gym on the ship, but which is suspiciously close to the kitchen where he can get all his snacks he loves so much. Let's say the player goes in from the home gym. They have to avoid this NPC here who moves back and forth. The player will have to time their proper movements and use gym equipment as cover to avoid detection. They'll make their way to this hallway here and have to properly time movement to avoid this guard to get over to this little boardwalk here to make their way to the back of the ship. From the dining room, this area here, I wanted to have as a spot that would make sense to have close to the kitchen and would be a bit of a... It just makes sense to have a dining room on a fancy cruise ship, I imagine. This was supposed to be a little stage over here where the senator will have like celebrities and they'll give announcements from the stage and have performers up here to entertain himself and his guests. A guard roaming back and forth here must be avoided by using the tables as cover and properly timing movements to avoid detection. A camera out here in this little leisure room pans back and forth must be properly timed to avoid, as well as if the player takes this path downwards here to this little camera room here, the player can hide in this conveniently placed bathroom to avoid detection by the camera. This area here is another little boardwalk area that has an NPC that goes back and forth. I put this NPC here to kind of balance out the number of like enemies to avoid for certain areas. So if the player takes this path here, they have to avoid 2 guys. If they go through here, they avoid 2 guys as well. The properly timed movements can make this guy pretty easy to avoid. But if the player doesn't want to have to deal with that, or they prefer to deal with cameras, they can go and make their way back up through here. Over to the bar and pool area. So I think another thing that not really a pet peeve, but kind of doesn't make sense to me is why you would want to have a pool on a boat. You have the greatest spot to swim like ever, the ocean. You decide to put a little dinky pool in your boat. But anyway, I really want to just have uniquely shaped rooms for my level. And it was a natural way to have a big circular area. When I was designing the levels, I started with these rooms here, and then these rooms here, and then moved on to this big old section here on the main deck. I felt that the rooms in the lower deck were a bit too square, so I wanted to experiment with some more unique room shapes when going onto the main deck, which is where this circle came about. The player can hide behind this bar here to avoid this NPC, or they can tuck behind into this little Turkish bath area here. An NPC rotating around this pool player must use proper timing to avoid detection by him as well. Then they'll make their way over to the stern end of the main deck. The player from here has the option of either going down to the lower deck or up to the upper deck. We've already discussed where they would end up if they went down to the lower deck, which is over here, which has the engine room and the generators, and also has the chef NPC if the player goes out of the way to try and rescue him and get the key. If the player takes the stairwell up from the stern end of the ship and goes on to the upper deck, if they take the starboard side path, they're going to make their way over to the surveillance room. The surveillance room contains a switch which will disable all security systems, including the lasers over here to the excuse me, to the control center or command center. I put this as an alternate option to the engine room being cut out, mostly because I felt that if this area was on a timer, then it would be a bit more tedious to go back and forth every time the player wanted to go to an area that is prohibited from entry by cameras or the lasers here. Anyway, if they take the port side, they can make their way over to this part of the upper deck here, which has 2 long hallways with cameras patrolling each. The player must make their way through the art gallery to avoid detection by the cameras. They must also use the art exhibits as cover to avoid this NPC here. If the player is able to sneak past this camera through proper timing, they can make their way onto the Senator's leisure suite, where a key here can be used to unlock the room containing the Senator's mistress, who can be rescued for an increased score, and also will give the player a map layout to make it easier on replayability to find secrets and beat the game quicker for a better score. Excuse me. This area here is the Senator's office. We'll come back to it in just a second as we go over the rest of the deck, the upper deck here, because this is the last thing that the player will do before making their way to the end of the level and trying to beat the game. The player can get over to this part here of the upper deck through these stairwells here. On the port side, there's an NPC that goes back and forth over here that that guards the map room, which has a note containing one of the 5 digits of the code to the Senator's office. This little suspicious sorry. This little toilet area over here can be used to hide in while the guard goes back and forth. This area here is the command center. This is the most important part of the ship, as it determines the pretty well everything on it. It's got navigation, it's got the steering. Steering is navigation, but whatever. You know what the command center looks like. This area is inaccessible without triggering an alarm, because there is these 2 lasers blocking both doorways from the port and starboard side. To disable these, the player must either go all the way to the surveillance room or cut the power from the engine room, which is a temporary solution. This area here contains what will most likely be the final note needed to unlock the Senator's office. The starboard side has a little camera here, a server room that can be used to hide behind to avoid this camera, and then the laser here. This area here is probably an easier option compared to this one here, because if the player disables the power, they can turn off both these at the same time, making it moving into here super easy. An NPC, sorry, forgot to mention this, the command center. This NPC here goes back and forth in kind of a half-circle moon shape, and can be avoided by using the main control center as cover. Now we'll get over to the Senator's office. So once the player has collected all 5 of the necessary notes to unlock the Senator's office, they can try and interrogate him. By interacting with him, the player will get all the intel they need to make their way back, and will get all the intel they need and must complete the second part of the level, which is making their way back to the sandbar undetected in order to win. This makes it so the player just doesn't immediately win upon reaching this area here. and also gives an increased challenge in beating the level essentially backwards. So if the player goes here, they must go all the way back down to the stairwell here, avoid this NPC, avoid all the other present hazards, and make their way all the way back to the watchtower. The player, excuse me, the food elevator here can be used to skip the passcode necessary to unlock the door to the senator's office if the player was able to find the secret chef NPC and get the key from them. When the player reaches this point, they are also able to escort the senator out of the ship, much like the mistress and the chef. The player does not need to do this. Once they get the info from him, they can just bail and they can win the game. The player doesn't need to save any of the NPCs to win, but will be rewarded with a better score in doing so. There's a couple reasons why the player would not want to save the senator. For one, once they reach here, they've collected all the 5 notes. I might imagine the player will have very little time left to make their way all the way back to the ship in time. So there's going to be a ticking clock. The player is going to feel anxious. They'll just say, okay, I don't have enough time to save the senator at the same time as the mistress. Save the senator at the same time as being able to get myself out. I don't want to slow down for him. I will leave him behind. The player may feel that he deserves to be left behind because of his horrible, horrible crimes towards the people of this foreign nation. Or maybe they just want to go for a different ending. Maybe they saved him the first time and they want to try out all the different possible options. Sorry, lost my train of thought a bit there. There's also a sun deck on the ship, which can be accessed by taking this stairwell here from the starboard side of the upper deck. From here, the player can hit this hidden switch to disable the timer that is running down as they play throughout the level. This is kind of a secret area that rewards players who are struggling with an easier option when beating the level. I imagine if they flip the switch, they'll get a decreased score at the end. Maybe like if there's a ranking system, they would only be able to get like a B rank if they flip the switch and not get like an A rank or something like that. Yeah, what else is there to say? I mean, I don't really know how much else is there to say. I think the timer feels like a good thing to put in because it increases it gives it a bit more of a challenge to the level itself. There is a natural way for the player to remove the timer to make things a bit easier for themselves. And also it makes it so replayability is improved. I think when I was a kid, my favorite part of any game, like kart racing, Mario Kart being the big example, was the time trial mode, seeing how fast I could beat levels. I think the speedrunning community is built on this concept, and playing into that will be a really good way to make the level memorable, replayable, and will promote discussion about it, which is the most important thing when making a game these days, I feel, is having people talk about it and talk about how much fun it was and comparing things about it. But anyway, that's probably the end of my discussion for the level for now. Hopefully, I went over everything in a positive manner. I know I tend to talk really, really fast during these videos. But, yeah, I'm just about getting ready to submit everything here. In terms of fluff for people who are looking at this from the future after I've released these videos after April 2026, because I can't release this stuff to the public until then. The package I needed to submit for my level was an annotated layout of the yacht, which has essentially everything I've just described over here, talking about gameplay beats, the purpose of every room, these little annotated parts here, like what do these little map bits mean, how the cameras pan back and forth, everything annotated like that, references for every part of the room here, and a 300-word write-up. Yeah. If in the event I don't get picked for the top 10, I would like to thank Ubisoft for the opportunity to check out my stuff. I'll probably be back next year, hopefully, for another shot at this. I had a lot of fun, and I look forward to hearing what they have to say. Because all criticism is good criticism. If it's not good this time around, next time it'll be even better.